Well, we hadn't been living in Alrewas very long when I became aware that there was a great deal of talent in the village, artistic talent and performing talent. And I gradually started to think that it would be a good idea to have a showcase for this talent, perhaps a weekend of performances and exhibitions and displays. But I wasn't confident enough to do anything about it. And this went on for ages and ages until it was a group meeting. I think it was probably Alrewas Arts, the group that organised the Live and Local. I think that's what it was. And I happened to mention this, that there was a lot of talent and I thought it would be a good idea. And I'd been thinking about it for a long time. And Sue Williams said, well, you need to stop thinking about it and do something about it, and I'll help you. And other people, notably Sally Stanton, said they'd help as well. So I was sort of prodded into it. And we got a steering committee together, and we were thinking about a weekend with performances and displays and exhibitions. And this steering committee called a public meeting, invited people to come to a meeting so that we could test the water, really, see what interest there'd be and if we could get any help. And something very significant happened at that meeting. A couple, I didn't know who they were. They may have been new to the village. I'm not sure about that. I can see them sitting on the back row. But they said, well, this is great, you know, having performances, having exhibitions, having displays. Why don't you do workshops as well? If there's a lot of talent in the village, why don't you get people who have that talent, who are skilled in arts or crafts or video or performance, to share their skills with people who are interested in learning? Well, we hadn't thought about that. But when we did start to think about it, we realised that it was a good idea. And so we got together a committee, and I'd like to mention the people on the committee, if that's okay, because I think that what we did together was tremendous. So there was me, I was the chair. I think Paula Dumoulin might have been the vice chair. Then there was Sue Lane, Sue Williams, Sally Stanton, Adam Wright, Bert Fritkoft, Paula Dumoulin, I've mentioned her once, Joanna Stevenson, Clive Matthews, Jeff Jacks, Liz Ogilvie, Pat Winter, Jane Riley, Janet Cox, Roger Halewood, Mike McNamara, Delise and Roger Saunders. And that was the committee that set out to organise this arts festival, which rapidly expanded from being a weekend to being a whole week. And one of the questions we had was, will we find enough people to run these workshops? And we didn't actually call them workshops, we called them have-a-go sessions because we thought that was a bit more user-friendly. Well, we had no difficulty in that. People from the village came forward, as they always do. And we had 22 people willing to give up their time throughout the week to run these have-a-go sessions. And we defined the festival really to keep it distinct from Alrewas Show and the Open Gardens. And so it was an arts festival within the village, events to include audio, visual, performing and literary arts, music and creative crafts. And the other thing we decided on was that it should be within the village because there was sufficient talent and enthusiasm within the village to run a festival and to run a festival for a week. Yes, so that's how it started. So it's one thing to plan and to organise and to get things ready. But if people don't respond, you don't have a festival. And the response was tremendous. For example, with the Have-a-Go workshops, we rapidly found that they were oversubscribed. And instead of having however many we'd planned to have, we had to extend that and put on additional Have-a-Go sessions to accommodate the people who wanted to participate. And there was tremendous enthusiasm and support within the community, and I always thought, and I'm not the only person who thinks this, that the village is at its best when it comes together for events like, well, as it happened, the Arts Festival, but also the show and the open gardens. So I'll talk a bit later perhaps about the responses that we got, but the initial response in supporting the performances, the exhibitions, and the Have a Go sessions was tremendous. And throughout the week, these 22 people who did the Have a Go sessions did more than 50 sessions. There were more than 100 participants in the performances, and this is in addition to people who exhibited in the arts exhibition, in the photographic exhibition, in the film and video exhibition, in the street market, and at the finale. So it was a tremendous involvement of participants throughout the week. Well, I think that the aspect of organising the festival that gave me most headaches, and probably the rest of the committee most headaches, was to do with insurance, and particularly insurance for the street market. Now, I'll come clean and say that when the street market was proposed, I wasn't actually over the moon about it, but I was persuaded. And I'll also say that on the day when it happened, a glorious day, and I walked into Post Office Road and I saw the colour and the stalls and the music and the throng of people, I thought, well, you were wrong, Graham. This is great. But what the problem with it was that obviously you needed public liability insurance. And that public liability, we found out that it wasn't just a case of putting up a few trestle tables, and that would be it. The public liability insurance demanded that we have proper market stalls, like the market stalls you get on Burton Market or Lichfield Market. And not only that we had proper market stalls, but that we had proper market stall erectors to put them up. And this would satisfy the insurance. And so that seemed to take a long time, and I think was perhaps the major headache, or the thing that caused me most sleepless nights. Well, the structure really was a mixture of performances which happened both during the day and in the evening, and there were things that we hadn't normally had, like classical music at lunchtime in the Methodist Hall. So that there was the juxtaposition of those performances and the Have a Go sessions, and then there were the exhibitions, the art exhibition in the Methodist Hall, the photographic exhibition in All Saints Church, the film and video festival which happened in the village hall, and there were two sort of larger events, the street market which I've mentioned, and a closing finale concert on Walkfield, which culminated in a fireworks display by Nick Collins. Well, I think the whole thing was a highlight, but and so what I'm going to say now is very subjective. But Liz Ogilvie, who was on the committee, discovered that there was a man in the village called Mike O'Brien who had worked as a prop maker in the film industry, and she persuaded him to make a flock, a life-size flock of fiberglass sheep, which people in the village then decorated, and which appeared at various parts of the village throughout the festival. And they were the Methodist Hall was the hub of the festival. Lots of things happened there, and the administration happened there. But also, that's where the sheep were locked away at night. And I was going to open up early one morning, at about 8 o'clock, I think. And as I was walking down Post Office Road, there was a man in overalls riding his bike towards me, probably going to work, I should think. And as he got nearer, he shouted, "Haven't you got them sheep out yet? They're good, they are." And that stays with me, I think. And I think, and there are lots of things. Some things I'll come on to later when we get to response. But I think another thing as well was that we made a film. Peter Raleigh and I made a film about the Trent and Mersey Canal. And this stemmed from a suggestion by Harry Arnold. And he suggested that I go and see Brian Burton and his sisters. And I went to see them, and we subsequently filmed them. And I think what stays with me about that was that they talked about their grandparents being bargees and transporting cargo up and down the canal, and them as children going to see them. So that's part of the heritage of the village that could have been lost and that's been saved. But the other thing that I'm interested in people talking and how people talk, and accent and dialect. And I don't think that the Orrewas accent is particularly distinctive or particularly strong. I mean, if you know it, you can recognise it. But it doesn't stand out like a broad Derbyshire accent or a Brummie accent or even a broad Staffordshire accent. And Brian Burton had an Orrewas accent. And because Orrewas accents, as the village changes and has changed, are becoming rarer, it's good to have on film for posterity, for people to see somebody speaking with an Orrewas accent. I mean, it wasn't just him, there were other people as well, but that comes to mind immediately.
That would be great.
And also the big art, the public art displays, and I think particularly of the Pebble Mosaic that was on the wall at the back of the Crown Inn, that was the idea of Sally Stanton, who designed it, but that was a big statement, and also something that's persisted. Sorry, not persisted, but lasted. But I would want to say, I think that I think for the whole week was a highlight, and in picking out those, they're very subjective. I wouldn't want to be suggesting that they were more important or better than the rest. But and when I think about highlights, you know, the fact that all these people gave their services free, absolutely free, and some of those people worked professionally in the arts or in performing, and they gave their services free as well. And not only did the people give their services free, but each venue that we used, and we tried to use as many venues as we could around the village, they gave their premises free as well, and that has to be a highlight as well. It was an expensive event to stage, and we had funding from a lot of sources. And I've got a list of them here, but the main source was the lottery in its Awards for All funding. But we got money from the Orrewas Civic Society, from Orrewas Arts, from Lady Clark, Stan Clark's widow, from Mr. Sterland, who was a dentist, Shakespeare in the Park, Orrewas Parish Council, Staffordshire County Council, Lichfield District Council. We got funding from all of those sources.
So how much did the first festival cost to put on?
It was about £12,000, I think. Certainly on this page it says total 11,947. Now whether that was the final account or not, I'm not sure, but it was around about that, yeah.
So in terms, it was obviously a successful festival, we know that, but what effect do you think, lasting effect, do you think it's had on Orrewas?
Well, I think an important thing, really, a thing I thought was important, was me knowing when to hand it on to somebody else. And Paula Dumoulin and Joanna Stevenson took the baton and not only ran with it, but raced away with it. And they developed and they extended the festival so that it didn't atrophy. It didn't just stay the same as it had been. It stayed essentially the same, but developed and extended, and is still happening every 2 years, and has become, I think, a principal feature in the village calendar, and stands along with the show and the open gardens as something that people look forward to. And it's like a social cement, isn't it? Getting people together, I think, is like a social cement, and it gives people an identity when they're meeting together in something like the Arts Festival.
What was the reasoning behind the 2-year cycle?
I think it was because it took so much effort that we didn't think we could do it every year. I think the immediate response from people was, when's the next one going to be? And we had a lot of response, a lot of positive response, and I can't remember any negative response. And just going back to the market stalls in Post Office Road, we were particularly careful to go round and take notes to people's doors and knock on doors and say, this is going to happen, it'll be noisy, you'll be disrupted, we'll have to close the road, and wondering, well, what will people think about that? The response was tremendous. We had no objections. In fact, the people who lived on Post Office Road came out and enjoyed it. But we did have some written responses, a lot of them, and I've just chosen this one, and I'll read a bit of it if that's okay. It was an absolutely wonderful event which I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm sure that I'm not alone in saying that I discovered talents, although limited, that I didn't know I had. The workshop leaders were so patient with us all and explained things very well. It was lovely to meet other people and have fun in such a relaxed atmosphere, very therapeutic. It was great to see the community and visitors coming together. The entertainment was superb, and the entertaining finale concert was second to none. The atmosphere was great. I feel very privileged to live among such talented people who are willing to share those talents. I think if you do it again, I might have to pull a sickie from work to have another go at workshops. Now that's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that sums up, I think, all that we would have wanted to say about it. But it wasn't just the people in the village as well. The people passing through Orrewas on canal boats who moored up for the day or for the night, they came to the festival as well, and they participated in the festival. I can still see some people from the boats putting pebbles into the Pebble Mosaic, and one couple took the trouble to write to the Burton Mail. As visitors to Orrewas passing through on our narrow boat, Just Billy, we'd like to extend our thanks for the wonderful welcome received in the village during the Orrewas Arts Festival. We were indeed lucky to be able to enjoy the art photographic exhibition, sit in the garden of the Crown having a drink while watching the play Exodus, and also attend the Roses and Castles workshops. The workshops have been a highlight of our holiday and have sparked an artistic flair my husband never knew he had. Orrewas is a beautiful village with a wonderful friendly community, and we feel fortunate to have been able to drop in on your first arts festival. Congratulations to all concerned. You should feel very proud, and we hope you repeat your success in the future years. Wendy and Roger Walden.
That's wonderful, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So, because we'd already made a film, and because it was favourably received, at the time of the next festival, it seemed like a good idea to make another film. And because I'd heard people talk quite often about Orrewas during the war, during the Second World War, particularly about dancers in the village hall, it seemed like a good idea to look into that and see whether there was a film to be made out of it. And there certainly was a film to be made out of it. And we made Orrewas a Good Billet. With interviews with people who'd lived through the war, who'd lived in the village during the war. I remember Betty Newell talking about cycling down the A38 at wartime, and another woman whose name I forget, but who married a German, talking about her experiences, and people talking about the experiences of the dancers in the village hall when there was a coal fire, and a woman in the village used to go in and make up the coal fire in readiness for the dance. And so we made this, and this went on to be part of Alrewa's archives, where Peter Raleigh has made films for each festival, and perhaps even in between festivals, but made a number of films that are all to do with the village's heritage. And the importance of this is that it captures the memories of people, the voices of people, the images of people who, a lot of whom, are now no longer with us, but they're there on film for future generations and their families to see. And that's a really important thing to happen, I think.